Benji, what do you have? Oh, he only has one brother, you see. And Ruth, one sister, you see. So some people have more, some people have less. Leo, how about Leo? How many do you have? Who? Six brothers, you see. So Leo has a lot of brothers, and maybe so Leo has to deal with many brothers and many different ways how to deal with. Some of us have more, some of us have less. Esmeralda, right? Six sisters. So wow, imagine six brothers or six sisters, man. I only have one sister, and it's already good enough. Nah, it's good. But yeah, so I was meditating. I'm like, you know what? Like, there's something that we could all relate. We all have a brother or a sister, and how do we treat each other, and how can we become better and don't let bad things come in the way, in our families. Especially because during the holidays, that's when you see everybody, especially like maybe Leo has a big family. They all come in and they all, gather around. Now Ruth too, a little bit more, you have your brother-in-law. So there's some families that are bigger than others, and they all come together, and we're supposed to share a special moment. But a lot of the times there's a lot of conflict in that area, and how can we deal with it. And I'm like, you know what, maybe you should talk a little bit about that. So you guys have your Bibles? So we're gonna go to Genesis, and there's a very famous story that we all read many times, but we're gonna have a little review. And we're gonna go to chapter 37 of Genesis. All right. So you guys are there? Okay. And I'm going to read a couple of the verses. And Jacob dwelled in the land wherein Jacob dwelled in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. There are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, and with the sons of Silpha and his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. So, do everybody know where we're getting already? We're gonna talk about Joseph. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children. Now we must understand that when he says Israel, we're talking about Jacob, because remember that God changed his name. So when I say Israel, we're talking about Jacob. So now Jacob loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all of his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peacefully unto him. And Joseph dreamed, and he told his brethren that they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we are binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaf stood around about and made an absence to my sheaf. And his brethren say to him, shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and his words. Okay. So, how many of you, I'm pretty sure all of you guys have read the story of Joseph, right? So, we know Joseph is a very unique, but yet very, a lot of sadness, and yet a lot of joy at the same time. So, and one thing about Joseph, about his story, is that it's something that really relates to us, like, and like I was talking about brothers and sisters, how we have different, some of our brothers have different attitudes than us, and how do we deal with them, So in Joseph's story, it touches a very specific area in our lives where we can all kind of relate, the ones that we have brothers or sisters. So as we are reading, we realize that there is already a problem, right? There is already a problem going on with his brothers and in his father. So the Bible already told us that Jacob loved more than all of his children Joseph. So, Jacob had, he had 12 kids. So, but he was having favoritism. And that's that word, favoritism. Now, from what I've read, Jacob maybe intentionally or unintentionally, from what we know, but he was showing favoritism to one of his children more than others, and that was bringing a lot of problems. That was bringing a lot of resentment around the other brothers. So, who's the oldest right here, and from your family? I know Benji, right? You're the oldest. You have the older brother, huh? Yeah. So, who else is the oldest in their family here? Oh, her. Okay. So there's only like three of us, right? Me, I'm the oldest. So a lot of you, most of you guys are not the oldest. Are you? You're the oldest, huh, Jaden? Yeah. Well, you're the oldest. So you see, Jaden is the oldest. So maybe he has it easier because he's the guy in the family, right? But a lot of you guys are not the oldest. So you guys have to deal with an older brother, right? Or an older sister. And sometimes, I don't know how, maybe you guys deal with them differently, but sometimes they try to show authority over you guys, right? Or try to tell you guys what to do. Sometimes I'm not sure if that's happened before, which is, that's normal. Most of the time, most families that have a lot of brothers and sisters, I hear that a lot. They have a lot of little, conflicts of authority. They're like, hey, you know what? You can't tell me what to do, Bo. But and that's something that it happens, in some families more than others. And as we can see, Joseph was like the youngest one. So for the people that have read the story, Joseph was the youngest of the brothers at that point. Right now, at that point, because Benjamin came in later in the story. But right now, as we can see, he was the youngest. So the older brothers and all of our brothers, but especially the older ones, if you read the story, were starting to have very strong hate feelings towards him, and we started to read that he had a dream. Joseph was he God gave him dreams, and one of those dreams, it was showing that he was doing something that maybe he did back then. He was trying to get all the hay and making them in little packs for the sheep or the animals. And in his dream, he was saying that all of his brothers, hay and wheat and everything was falling down and bowing unto him. So, and that was really bringing a lot of problems, because I'm like, wait, the older brothers, they're like, how are we supposed to show more redeem qualities to his younger brother when he's the favorite? So they were starting to have a lot of conflicts in there, right? So, but we're gonna continue reading. Okay. And then, so in verse 9, and he dreamed yet another dream and told his brethren and said, behold, I have a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars they bowed to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, why is this dream thou hast dreamt? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come down and bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock into Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said unto him, Here am I. And he said to him, Go and pray thee, see what it will be well with my brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, Where seek thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed the flocks. And the man said, they are departed here. They departed hence, for I heard them saying, let's go to Dodan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him far off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. So we're going to pause right there for a minute. So as we can see, Joseph was, his father is like, hey, you know what? I went to get, because, back then people had a lot of flock of sheep. They have animals. So his brothers, they were, taking care of his animals. But his father was like, hey, you know what? Maybe they're taking a little bit too long. I wonder what's their deal. What are they up to? So he sent Joseph, right, to go check up on them. It's like, hey, I'm going to send him. But not knowing that, that his brothers were up to something, but Joseph is all like, hey, it's okay. I'm going to go and see. So as we're reading, Joseph goes and he looks for them. But it says right here already that his brothers, before he even reached them, they already conspired. Means that they're already thinking of what? Slaying him. What the slaying means. They were thinking of killing him. That's what it means. So as we were reading in the beginning of the chapter, there was so much hate towards Joseph that they were already thinking of killing him. To what point was the hate so much, Like I was saying, yeah, we have brothers and sisters, but to the point to hate him, to kill them, that's another story, That's already something that it's really bad, And it shouldn't be like that, of course. Of course not. But as we can see in the story with Joseph, his brothers were already thinking about killing him, even before he even reached them. So let's continue reading. And they said one to another, behold, the dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into the pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might ride him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass that when Joseph was come unto his brethren, they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty, and there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead, with their camels, bearing spices and palm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. Let's pause right there. So, what has happened? They were wanting to kill him, right? They had so much hate for his brother that they were going to kill him. But as we can see, Reuben, one of the older brothers, one of the oldest, he stopped them. He told them, hey, let's not shed blood. We're already doing an evil thing. So I want to say that Reuben, even though, yes, he disliked them and he was one of the oldest brothers, yet he had some sort of compassion because, he didn't want to kill him. He didn't want to shed his blood. So as we were reading, he stopped them. He told them, hey, you know what? Let's not do this. Let's just throw him to the pit like a well, and let's just teach him a lesson, So it says that they grabbed him, they ripped his jacket, and then they throw him to the pit. And it says they had no water, so it was an empty pit. And when they throw him, it says that some Ishmaelites were passing by. And Ishmaelites, I've done some history. I read some history in the past, and I've read that they were big slave traders. You know what are slave traders, right? So slave traders were people that bought other people, and they used them for slaves. So they had a reputation for being people that bought people. So let's say Leo, and a couple of his friends, they're like, you know what, we don't like this guy. We're gonna try to sell him. So back then they would just go and capture him, beat him up, and then they'll wait for those Ishmaelites to come in, and they'll just sell him, like a car, like a piece of animal, and that was not their problem anymore. So back then it was very dangerous to live, anybody, and it's not just And it was not just like the Israelites, but any other race back then could just like steal anybody and just sell you. So it was very dangerous. So that's why it was very easy for them just to be like, hey, there comes some Ishmaelites. They're known as slave traders and they're carrying spices and everything. Let's just sell them to him like a car. So back then, people were valued a lot. Like today, maybe cars or, maybe, I don't know, it depends, but they were still valued a lot. So back then, slaves were very valuable. They have a lot of value. So for them, it was like, hey, let's make some money because they do pay them. We're going to read that they did pay for Joseph. So let's continue. And Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is this if we slay our brother? As you can see, they're already thinking about making money out of him, and conceal his blood. Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. Then there were passed by Militites, merchants, men, and they drew him and lifted up to Joseph out of the pit and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. So they, as you can see, they paid for him, 20 pieces of silver. So they're already like, his brothers were, as you can see, they were very evil, but at the same time, they were like, you know what? Maybe some compassion. Let's not kill him. His brothers, as you can see, Judah is like, you know what? Let's not kill him because we're not going to make no money out of it. That's how bad it was, So they're like, you know what? He's our brother. He's our flesh and blood. If we kill him, we're not going to gain anything. But if we sell him, we're going to get some money. At least let's get some money out of it. And it's 20 pieces of silver. So let's do the math. It's 11 brothers, 20 pieces. Let's say every single one of them get like at least 2 coins or around there. 2 pieces of silver, So they're like, you know what? Let's make some money. So right away, they sold them. And let's continue reading. And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. And he returned unto his brethren and said, the child is not, and whither shall I go? And they took Joseph's coat and killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat in blood. And they sent the coat unto many colors, and they brought it to their fathers and said, this have we found. Now know whatever it be thy son's coat or not. And he knew it, and he said, it is my son's coat. And the evil beast had devoured him. Joseph is, without a doubt, rent in pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes and put a sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son for many days. And all of his sons and all of his daughters rose up and comforted him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, for I will go down in the grave unto my son's mourning. This his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and the captain of the guard. So, what happened? His brothers, they sold him. One of his brothers tried to save him. He tried to get a rope, and he found that he was already gone. So, as you can see, he got upset. And his brothers right away, they took his coat and they decided to dip it in blood so they can hide their sin and hide their evil thing that they have done. So they lied. They pretended that their brother was killed, which he was not. But that was a story that they wanted to sell to his father. So it makes you think, why didn't they just told their father that that they sold him, or some Ishmaelites took him? Because his father most likely would have seen through his lies, He would have been like, no. How would they sell him? So they had to make it to believe him that no, he got killed. That's the end of the story. Case closed. So his father thought that he was dead already. So his father, he never thought that he was still alive. So they thought that by doing that and conquering and conjuring that kind of lie, that his father would have believed it, and they were like, we never have to hear about it ever again. But as you can see, that was far from the case. They sold him, and they sold him, it says right here, to Potiphar, who was one of Pharaoh's captains of Egypt. So Potiphar, as you can see, he was an officer. He had authority. So he wasn't just any he wasn't just like anybody. He was somebody that had authority in Egypt. So now we're gonna read over here we're gonna go now to chapter 41 in Genesis. A couple of pages. So we were talking about how Joseph had dreams, right? And that was one of these things. Now, and one of the things that we're talking about Joseph, because I was saying, in the beginning, was that we have brothers. So how we supposed to deal with our brothers and sisters? Some of them have different attitudes and we should never let ourselves be taken by evil deeds to do things like this. Of course, to the point where one has to sell his own brother. We should never let that sort of evil spirits come into our life to that point. So in chapter 41, it just shows another one of Joseph's dreams, because so we can continue. And it came to pass that at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh's dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kin and fat flesh, and they fed in the meadows. And behold, 7 other kin came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean flesh, and stood by the other kin upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and left flesh kin did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kin. So Pharaoh awoke. And he slept and dreamed the second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, and ranked and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with east winds, sprung up after them. And then 7 thin ears devoured the 7 ranked full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men. Therefore, and Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was none of that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. And spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. And Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me inwards with the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed in one night, one night I and he, and we dreamed each man according to their interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, a Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was that he restored unto my office, and have him hanged, the baker. So as we can see, the Pharaoh, Pharaoh was like the king, was the all-powerful person in Egypt. So he's having dreams about, the skinny cows, how they were raised from the river, and how the big cows eat them up. So no, the skinny cows ate up the big fat cows, and then how the good grain was eaten up by the bad grain. So he's having these dreams, and he's starting to get very scared and frightened. So he's like, "Oh, what do they mean? What's going on?" So in Egypt, there's a little bit of history. Back then, the Egyptian people, their mythology was very big on dreams. So from what I've read was that the Pharaoh, he did a lot of things according to what he dreamed. So if he dreamed about things, that's what happened. So in those years and those ancient times, the Egyptians were very mystical and very superstitious about dreams. If something is gonna happen, most likely it's gonna come true. So he saw these and he's all like, "What do they mean? What do they mean?" He was very scared. So as we can see, he asked a lot of his wise men. Nobody can tell him. He asked a lot of people from his council. Nobody can tell him what the dreams mean. So he went to ask other of his group of advisors, until, as we can see, the cupbearer, somebody that pours the pharaoh's his drink, heard about it, and he's all like, "Hey, I know somebody that can interpret your dream, and he's a Hebrew, and he's in jail." So, as you can see, the pharaoh is very intrigued by this. And then let's go to verse 14. And then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his garments, and he came unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, "I have dreamed, and I dreamt, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say thou canst understand the dream to interpret." And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace." And Pharaoh said unto Joseph in my dream, "Behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, came up out of the river 7 kin, fat flesh, well favored, and they fed in the meadow." So the Pharaoh is telling Joseph about the dream again, how it happened, why am I being troubled. And as you can see, Joseph is in trying to interpret the dream. So let's go to verse 25, right there in the same chapter. And Joseph said unto the Pharaoh, "The dream of the Pharaoh is one. God had showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kin are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and the ill-favored kin, and I came after that are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with east winds shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoke unto Pharaoh, what God is about to do unto Pharaoh's kingdom. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there arise after them 7 years of famine, that all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land, but the reason of the famine following. For it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was double unto Pharaoh's twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring into pass. Now therefore let Pharaoh took out of the man and decreed and wise, and set him off the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers of the land, and take up the 5th parts of the land of Egypt in 7 plentiful and plenteous years, and let them gather all the food in those good years, and come and lay upon corners under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And then so Joseph is telling him what to do now. So Joseph, he was a very smart individual. Not only did he dream, not only did he interpret the dreams of Pharaoh by being, well, you know what, Pharaoh, this is what the dreams are about. It's up to you what you do. I can't tell you what to do. That's up to you. But no, he actually went even a step further. Not only did he interpret the dreams, he actually, of course, told them what they're about, but he even told them, all right, but this is what you can do. Actually, God is giving you a warning. So Pharaoh is listening to all this. He's like, man, not only can he interpret dreams, he can and listens to what other people have to say, but he's actually even telling me what to do about it, which is very important because, it's like, it's when somebody tells you something. How many of us have asked somebody about something, like, what did you think about it? And they're like, they don't really tell you anything. They're like, oh, I don't know. Sometimes it's frustrating, right? Sometimes you tell, hey, what do you think about this? Is this wall is yellow? What do you think about it? Should it be green or should it be red? I don't know. Do you think yellow matches with the floor? I don't know. I don't want that kind of person. I don't want to ask that kind of person about stuff, I want to ask the person that tells you, well, you know what? The yellow maybe matches with the floor. Well, not as much, but maybe it matches with the chair's legs. It's kind of yellowish. So there's a conjuring right there. Maybe there's some good little look. Something like that, right? Everybody wants something like that kind of answer. Not just, I don't know. Let me ask Google. Google's not gonna give you the answers that you want. So one wants what I'm trying to say is that we want a human being's response. We don't want a machine response, because machine is only gonna give you numbers and data and facts, but we want a human feeling. You know what I mean? So what Joseph is telling Pharaoh, he's not just being a machine. He's not just being a Google. Oh, Pharaoh, well, this is what it means. This is what's going to happen. Well, and that's it. Well, do whatever you want to do. I don't know. I mean, imagine if Joseph would have answered to him like that. Most likely Pharaoh would have been like, well, you know what? Just send him back to the dungeon. He's not used to me either way. I mean, yeah, he interpreted, but he gave me, and back then, giving bad news to pharaohs or to kings, if you upset them, you would have cost you your life. So Joseph was trying to be the best as he could. He's like, well, you know what? I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you instructions how to go out through this problem or through this crisis. So so Joseph is telling them right here in this chapter. Now we're going to go to chapter right there in 40. Let's go to chapter 45. So, I know we're going pretty fast because it is a lot, and there's a lot of we can talk about in this story. There's a lot of details, but I'm trying to get to a point because we were not talking about dreams. We were talking more about like how we can deal with our brothers, right? So I'm telling you guys this because if you guys know the story, after Joseph tells Pharaoh about the dreams and he interprets them, Pharaoh was so pleased by that he named Joseph the second commandant out of Egypt. He gave him power and authority. He let him rule his land only in second in command. So Joseph was from being a nobody to being like the second most powerful person in the whole of Egypt, which is a big thing, especially back then. For somebody to reach that sort of level, it wasn't easy. It was almost impossible. But Joseph was able to show how wise and how devoted he was. And telling Pharaoh that, yes, I can interpret your dreams, but the most important thing, it doesn't come from me. It comes from God. God is the one that is giving you a message. And the Pharaoh was very intrigued by that. So now, let's we skip a little bit, some timeline. The famine is going on. His brothers go and try to look for food. They hear that there is plenty of grain in Egypt, so they're trying to look for food. They find Joseph. They don't recognize him, right? They don't recognize Joseph, that he's the second most powerful person in Egypt. They think he's just a regular anybody, As we can see, Joseph does recognize his brothers, though, which is very interesting. He does recognize their faces, but he tests them. He gives them a little test. And I know that there is a lot of details, but I don't, we will talk about that some other time. But we see that Joseph, during that test, they have a younger brother, which is Benjamin. So Benjamin, as later on, you guys can read the story but we'll read it some other time. Well, Benjamin starts becoming his dad's second favorite now. Because remember, his father thinks that Joseph is dead. So now Benjamin is like the favorite one. But his brothers don't act the same with Benjamin anymore. His brothers act very differently about him. And as we can see, and we're about to read, his brothers, something happened during all those years that their brothers acted in hate and in ill will toward his brother. But after all the years, they actually start to regret it so much. To the point where now they have a younger brother, which is Benjamin, and they don't treat him like they treat Joseph. They actually treat him better. To the point where, as we can start reading, Joseph tests them. and tells them that, I'm going to take Benjamin away. And they refuse. They actually don't accept that. And the reason they don't accept that is because, as we can start reading, they start to regret what they've done. And they start acting like, what's going on here? So we're going to read. So we're going to read right there. And before we read chapter 45, let's go to chapter right there in 46. And I'm going to read verse... let me see. So I'm gonna read chapter 33, and verse 33 in chapter 44. It's right there, next page. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of his lad, bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. For shall I go up to my father, and the lad be not with me, lest preferent I see evil that shall come into my father. So I just want to read that little part because his brothers are already starting to act like, hey, like don't keep our youngest brother, like let him go back to his father. So now I'm going to read chapter 45. And then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them, and stood by him, and he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there he stood with no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph, do my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, who ye sold into Egypt. And therefore, be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. For these years the famine been in the land, and yet there have been 5 years in which there shall neither be hearing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you posterity in the earth, and save your lives by the great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me, but God, and he halted me, made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of his house, and ruled through all the land of Egypt. And go to my father and said unto him, thou said Joseph, God made me the lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, and thou shalt dwell in the land of Gohan, and thou shalt be near unto me, and thou children, and thou children's children, and thy flock, and thy herds, and all thou hast. And there will I nourish thee, for thee there are 5 years of famine, and thou household, and all that has come in poverty. And behold, your eyes see, and your eyes of my brother Benjamin, that is in my mouth, that I speak unto you. They shall tell my father of my glory in Egypt, and all that ye have seen, and all that shall hast, and bring him down with my father hither. And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck, and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all of his brethren, and wept upon them, and father and his brethren talked with him. And the fame therefore was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying that Joseph, our brethren, are come, and it pleased Pharaoh well, and his servants. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, say unto thy brethren, these thou ye, lad your beasts, and go get you in your land of Canaan, and take your father and your household, and come unto me, and I will give you the good land of Egypt, and thou shalt eat the fat of the land. Now, and thou art commanded, to this ye take your wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Also regards not yours, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours. And the children of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of the Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the way. To all of them he gave each man changes of raiments, but Benjamin he gave him 300 pieces of silver, and 5 changes of raiments. So what happened there? So we're starting to read that Joseph He could have done many evil things to his brothers. He could have imprisoned them. He could have killed them. And a lot of people can say, well, yeah, he had the right to. He could have. But he did not. He actually forgave them. He actually wept. He was actually so sorry for what they did that they were in shock. As you can see, they didn't even recognize him. They're like, what the heck? Who's this? Like, what is he doing? But later on, when Joseph starts to tell them, hey, you know what? I'm your brother, the one you sold to Egypt. They start to realize, and they start weeping too. So they start getting sad that they have done such an evil thing. But Joseph was like, hey, I know that what you have done, what you guys have done, but look what I've saved in the land of Egypt, and it all has a purpose for me to go and be second in command and to preserve our family. That's why he tells his brothers, go and bring our families, our father, to the land of Egypt, so they could survive this famine, because there was still famine during that time. So it all came into God's plan. And to Benjamin, it says right here that he gave him what, 300 pieces of silver. How many pieces was Joseph sold for? 20. And how many did Joseph gave Benjamin? 300. So he gave him like what? Like almost like 6 or 7 times more than what he was sold for. So Benjamin got all the blessings, as you can see. But the point that I'm trying to say is that, you know, don't let it be too late for you. If there's problems with your brothers, don't let it come to the point where something drastic has to happen for you guys to reconsider yourselves. You know, always have, you know, a good heart with your brothers or sisters. Always try to find peace with them, because you never know. Maybe God will use you to talk to them or help them in some way. And you never know how God works in mysterious ways. Like, you know, my father is one of the youngest ones in his family. He has a lot of brothers and sisters, but yet, you know, they all have different attitudes and everything. But my father is actually the one always helping them in their lives most of the time. But it's just God uses us sometimes to bless our family. So as you can see, Joseph was the one used. I know that it wasn't an easy path. I know that God made him go through a lot of hardships, but in the end, he was able to not only help his family, help the whole land of Egypt, but the whole world around that time almost, you know, with everything going on. So how many other people did he help with having food for them, you know? So there was, you know, back then there was a lot of many different tribes, so, and a lot of different kind of people. So a lot of people were blessed by Joseph's ability to interpret the dreams and help harvest all the grain for all those years that was going to be there was not going to be any harvesting. So he helped the whole land of Egypt. So that's why I was thinking, I'm like, you know, and there's a lot of other little details, but Joseph is a very, very special person in the Bible. We can relate to. He wasn't like, you know, he wasn't really a priest or anything. He was just, you know, a little lad. I mean, he was young when he was sold. So when his brother saw him, he was already like older. He was a way older man. But all those years that he was away from his family and helped them build into that person that they needed at that time. And he became the leader because he was one of the youngest at that time. He became the leader of Israel in that time. He actually helped them out and get them. Even his father, I can only imagine what his father's reaction was when his brothers went and he told his father, "Hey, you know what? We lied. You know, Joseph was not killed. He was actually, we sold him." You know, what do you mean you sold him? Yeah, and well, he's alive. You know, so I'm pretty sure his father's, yes, I'm sure maybe his father was upset, but his joy to have Joseph alive was way more overwhelming than what they did. I think his father, I'm not saying he forgot, but at least he wasn't as mad as he was pleased. I'm pretty sure he was just so excited to see Joseph again that he forgave his brothers too for what they did, because he wanted to see his son again, you know. So hopefully you guys take that in consideration, you know, next time you guys are with your families. It's just something to think about. Okay? Okay. So let's stand up and let's say a prayer for today. Thank you, Lord, for today's sermon. I pray that today's sermon will help these young people and their families. Hopefully, they can take in consideration what I've taught about today. Hopefully, the Joseph's story will helps them in their lives and their families and their brothers and sisters. I pray that they take this sermon in their hearts and it helps them in their daily lives, whatever they do. I pray that you help each one of them and their parents to bring peace in their families, so that we can be good children of you, so you can have our spirit and help our spirit in every way that you could, Lord. I pray that you help us and each one of us in our daily lives. Amen. All right. Thank